The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondell.
Don't bring your car to a rodeo. Old boots or hat from a local western store. Wrong look at a fella or farmer's daughter. Might get y'all jack laid out on a pasture floor.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Stage Door Show. This is Dave Hondell. Tonight, I have one of my favorite guests. He's been on the music scene for a long time, and he's one hell of a singer-songwriter. And his huge following called Hoss Nation has just been treated to one of the new releases entitled Rat Race. Please welcome back to the show, Brandon Bing. Thanks for being with us, Brandon.
Hey, man. Thanks so much, Dave. I appreciate it. It's always a good time coming on here.
Absolutely, man. Third time on the show. Really appreciate that. And I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, you just don't stop. I mean, ever since, you've been on the show, you just keep, putting out songs and getting all kinds of streams. And one of those is just Rat Race. It just been released. And, I saw the video and really loved the video, man. I just want to kind of talk to you about that song, number one, and in the video as well. But what's the inspiration for Rat Race?
Yeah, there's a few different things that kind of took place with that record. And it's just, it was something that I kind of feel like on this journey as a writer, as an artist, there's a lot of layers to the onion that you're trying to expose to the audience. I obviously we went through COVID over the last couple of years and making that transition back into normalcy again, where people are able to consume live music. One of the things that I had to really, I guess, strategize more or less was like, what was going to be my approach, as a newer, artist that's still, emerging in certain aspects, different, audiences around the country as we continue to bring these shows back to life again. And I was like, COVID, I had a lot of chance to really self-reflect. Right. And with the self-reflection process, it led me to really, digging in deeper to like, who am I? Like, who is Brandon Bing? What is Hoss Nation as a brand and something that I'm trying to convey to the general public? And I was able to figure out specifically that, I always want to be, remembered, in country music and music as a whole, down the line, 20, 30 plus years from now, I want to be remembered as one of the best storytellers, in the space, really being raw and being, really unapologetic and direct with the approach on these records. And so Rat Race was one of those records for me. It was an opportunity for me, one, to come in with a blank canvas, coming into 2023, which is the building year this year, as things are kind of, getting rebalanced around the industry as a whole, and live music and shows are coming back, like I mentioned. And so with that, I was like, let me take it back home. Let me bring it back to Florida. So my buddy Wells Tony, that owns Welltail Media, he shot all my videos to this point. And so he had reached out to me back in January when we were trying to figure out the date when we were going to, do the video production for this record. And so at that point, I was coming back from Steamboat Springs, playing out there. And, I wound up realizing, I was like, man, he's like, we did one in Franklin. We did one in Maggie Valley with the Blue Collar Swaller, this, that, and the third. And I was like, yeah. He's like, how about taking it back home? And I was like, that's a great idea. I said, I got the perfect song that would fit that. And that was Rat Race.
Dirty blonde and some crystal blues, hands bound in bright red blue, horn honking swerving down a two-lane, lost control, lipstick smeared on his face. His brain starts shifting to a different state, living his life like a rat race. Don't know what road to take. One wrong turn at the blink of an eye changed his fate. He feels the car roll off the paved road into a tree. He sees the glass break and hears a scream that touch he makes from the blood on her face makes him instant sober.
And, you know, growing up in Seminole County and Volusia County, you know, Florida, and throughout my, you know, my teenage and my college, early adulthood, you know, I experienced a lot of loss. A lot of my friends had a lot of loss. People in our community that were near to us had a lot of loss from people that were either related to or that they knew from addiction. And I was like, this is a perfect, you know, opportunity for me to really capture, you know, the people that are following me on my music and that are attaching to my music, new followers from shows or on socials, to let them get an inside lens of, you know, what I come from, the environment that I come from, the people that I'm around, and what that looks like. And I was like, you know, this record's also something where I feel a lot of people, no matter what part of the country you're from, can really attach to, because I'm sure so many people have dealt with loss from addiction or substance abuse, whether it was something that was as a result of their own undertaking, or if it was something that was drawn onto them from, you know, the fault of somebody else that was under the influence that put, you know, that person that was close to them in jeopardy, where they, you know, ultimately lose their life. And so we shot this one down in Samsula, Florida, between Samsula and Smyrna Beach. Got one of the oldest, you know, biker bars. That's kind of like a staple historical pastime. You know, the Cabbage Patch. You know, Roger was grateful enough to allow me to use the space as one of the spots to cut some of the scenes, performance shots. And it was kind of coincidental because when Wells came down here, you know, it totally slipped my mind that, you know, going into the beginning of March when we were shooting it, that it was right in the middle of Bike Week. So, you know, Bike Week is obviously a very rowdy and a fun time, but, you know, there's also been a lot of heartbreak throughout Bike Weeks over the years because, you know, bikers, again, you know, they're out there having a good time with a lot of people and want to put themselves at risk. Maybe they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And I was like, man, I couldn't have something that better ties all these different elements together. And so we shot it on Mr. Stan Smith. He has a ranch property out here. My buddy Justin Wilkinson has a record shop, and he was able to bring the truck that you see in the scene out there. And, you know, he flipped the truck, and we created that space to, you know, recreate, you know, the image of, you know, how severe it is when you know, are driving under the influence with someone that you care about, you know, that's really close to you, that you love. And that's what, you know, this storyline, when Wales put together, it was so seamless. You know, I felt that he hit all the parts. We got the squatter trailer to kind of recreate the environment of just that old Florida feel. You know, there's a lot of gateways of drugs, whether it's meth or other things like that around, you know, Florida. And I think a lot of people that they come to Florida and they see Florida for the Disney World and for the beaches and for the major metropolises like your Miamis and Tampas and Orlandos and Jacksonville's. They don't really take a opportunity to experience old Florida, you know, the trailer parks, the rural environments. You know, they don't really, when you think Florida, you just don't think that. And so this gave them a chance to really see, like, man, Florida's a lot more than just beaches and tourism. You know, it's hardworking, blue collar, you know, roughnecks, and there's a lot of farming and ranching. The ag industry is really large in our community that really sustains a lot of the economy. You know, in addition to the other things that people know it for, and it gives you a little bit more of that bone chill, you know. And so yeah, we did that, and then my buddy Ori Lee, Cornbread Cowboy, you know, he hopped on, and you know, with his brand being a lot of that 90s, 80s throwback with his slow-mos and a lot of his footage, it gave me an opportunity for him to get his music video debut in this space for this record. But it couldn't have been a better choice because he was able to kind of recreate that nostalgia that people are attracted to with his brand. And with the musicality and the arrangements that I put together with my studio musicians on this project, you know, you kind of felt like you were in a moment back in time. And that's what this was. And then of course we had Miss, you know, Melanie Page, that was the female that was in the project as well. So they were the couple, you know, playing that storyline. And then I brought some other people from my community, you know, where I grew up to be a part on the extras and things like that, to just kind of paint that footprint so people kind of see the variation and complexity of the type of people that are around where I grew up, to really paint that picture for them.
Yeah, it was amazing. You really told the story. I mean, it was really well done. Kudos to the director and the kind of work you did with them and just the output. As a music video director myself, I just was very impressed with the work that was done on that video and just the song itself. So well done on that. And I live in Florida too. So I mean, just listening to you talk about, the non-Disney
Yeah.
I experience them all the time, and people don't realize when you go anywhere outside of the tourism areas, and I'm in Miami now, but I was in Orlando for several years, but you go anywhere outside of the big cities, and I mean it's it's like hard working, like you said, ranching, a lot of farming, and it's really part of the Americana that you think of when you think of like middle America or somewhere in the South. I mean, it's really, like you said, hardworking people, and people should take a little venture when they come down to Florida, and kind of see the other Florida, the old Florida, the Florida that really existed way before all the tourism came to be. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because last year you released Blue Collar Swaller, which I thought that was one of the funnest videos I've seen, and it just, a lot of your music is something that people could really get into and have fun with, and that's one of the reasons I like your music, is because it's a different brand of country music, and it's kind of your own, and it's a lot of fun to listen to, and you can dance to it, and so talk about that song Blue Collar Swaller, because that was really I would imagine it was probably cut right after COVID, and the video was done right after COVID, and people, I think, were ready to get out of their houses and go back to the bars and go back to their old way of life, and songs like that. I mean, that's one of those songs that, like I said, it just had to put a smile on my face when I heard it. So talk about that song and the timing of that, because like I said, it was right after COVID.
Yeah, actually, the crazy thing about that record, and I'm starting to, being in country music and just being in the space of being a songwriter as well, year after year, as I continue to grow, I'm going back into my catalog and going back into my voice memos and my notes and stuff like that, from all the songs that I start, or, hooks that I come up with. And I started that song, 2 or 3 years ago. And it was originally going to be called Blue Collar Tough. And when I was coming up with this idea, I knew that I was going to be, 2019, I put out Sunday Fun Day, did it in a small studio down here in Florida, with my guitar instructor, producer, Jeffrey Bowen, and did that with him. And then, in 2020, I started working with Kenny Royster, and I did, the Florida Man EP, and then I did the Dying Breed EP in 2021. And I was like, I've had to battle the adversity, because when I dropped the Florida Man EP in February 22nd, 2020, I played a show at the Barn in Sanford, full band, rocked their faces off, had a great time. And I was getting ready to do like Swanee River Jam and other festivals and other shows. And then all of a sudden the plug was pulled when we went into quarantine. And so I was like, man, what am I going to do? I'm a new act. There's a lot of people that don't know who I am. And I had to be really, like, again, strategic, because I didn't want to put songs out that were deep cuts and heavy and raw too quick without having an audience to support and stream and share. Because once the song is released, the song is released. Yeah, you could roll the dice and be the one that's lucky that people come back down the rabbit hole and might find those songs. But if not, the song winds up just being a waste. And, I've been fortunate enough to look at all these different variables. And as I'm creating music, I'm able to go into that space of like, now I got enough of a following across all the different platforms. I got enough people that come to shows, and it's growing day by day, week by week, month by month. And so when I wrote this record, I got my buddy Jeffrey Ham, and Jeffrey and I, we were at his house up in Nash, and he was like, hey, he's like, Bing Sauce, you want to write a song? And I was like, come on, Jeff, you already know I want to get one in with you. We've been talking about this for a long time. So we went up into his room, and in his office, we started playing around with some ideas. He busted out the telly, and I'm pulling out like work memos. We had some other ideas we were working on. I was like, hey, I said, bro, I got this song that's called Blue Collar Tough. I said, here, give me that guitar. Let me show you what I came up with. And then all of a sudden he was like, man, he's like, I love this. And he's like, let's like kind of blues, kind of like, you know, put a little more soul into this thing. And I was like, man, that's cool. It's a little bit more out of my box. Yeah. But I was like, I knew it was going to be something special because I wanted on this debut album, Huckleberry, I wanted to have a cut on there with a dear friend of mine. And Jeff's like a brother to me. And it was such an honor to be able to work with him on that record and bring it to fruition. And we finished, you know, writing that record together. And that was like one of the first co-writes that I was releasing. And it was also happened to be released on my debut album. So I felt like that was another level of progress, moving the needle in country music. And, you know, for me, for the people that have been following me that know, you know, hey, Brandon's always going to be the one putting pen to paper, writing his own songs, because I always want people to know, you know, specifically that I'm always going to be, you know, three things: authentic, vulnerable, and unapologetic in my process. And I feel like if I can maintain those elements as I continue to grow as an artist in this genre, then I feel long-term, Dave, it's going to give me a lot more credibility and respect.
Blue collar swaller. On the farm all day long till the moon shines. Monday, Thursday, he's up early working 5 to 9. When Friday rolls around, pickup loaded up, ready to throw it down. Blue collar swaller. Rednecks, roughnecks, spending weekly paychecks, cashed out, whiskey up, drinking grain in Dixie cups, out here in the hollers, spending hard-earned dollars. Ooh, blue collar swaller. Daisy Dukes and buckle bunnies near a honey hole. By God, her and her friends drinking whiskey, getting ready to go. She's about to show up and burn it down. She's the baddest girl around this entire town. Blue collar swaller.
And so we dropped that record, and the Blue Collar Swaller music video was never going to be a music video, which that's even crazier to me, because what it was Wells was up in, where was he? I think he was in Charlotte. He was in Charlotte and he was shooting a wedding, and he had hit me up and he was like, hey man, when we did Lockdown, we did that outside of Franklin. He's like, with this next video, do you want to do this next video in Nash again? Or like, what are you thinking? And then I was like, well, hey, what do you got coming up? And what was really wild was I was down here. I flew down to Florida for the weekend, and I came in, and BK, Brian Kelly from FGL, he's from Mormon Beach, and he had separated from Tyler they broke up, right? And yeah. So first solo tour, and it was called the Made by the Water tour. And he did it at the Daytona Bandshell, and I remember being there and going there to watch his show. And when I was watching that show, a friend of mine, Eric Whipple, he was there, and Eric was like, yo, man, let's come see BK after the thing. And I was like, and just, catch up and cut up. I'm like, all right, cool, man. We go back by the bus. That'll be dope. Well, all of a sudden I'm watching him do his Beach Cowboy record, and I see the J Creek Cloggers. I see Zeb and his mom, Kim, up on the stage dancing. And my buddy Ryan Charles had done a thing that was going viral on TikTok from doing a snippet of him using basically putting his song over New Boot Goofin' over the one of the videos that Zeb was out there with the J Creek Cloggers clogging at some festival, right? And it was just blowing up left and right. And I was like, man, that'd be cool to reach out to these guys. Well, I didn't know them, personally. And it just shows you how the 6 degrees of separation, or how things just come together when they're supposed to. Because honestly, Dave, man, I get a call from Wells, and Wells is like, yo, he's like, I'm going to be up here shooting this wedding. My family's got a spot up in Franklin. We can go stay at the cabin, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, all right, cool, man. That's dope. And then he's like, we can go to shoot. We can figure out I had another song, which I did a video that came out after that, which was in July, that Take My Land video. And so it worked out like a double benefit, because what happened was I get up there and I had hit Zeb. I had tagged the video from DK performing and having Zeb and Kim, dancing on the stage during that show at the Daytona Band Show. And then we started communicating through DMs on Instagram. And I thought I was talking to Zeb, but I was actually talking to his mom, because she was like kind of managing the whole thing at first. Okay. And then so me and her, we hit it off really well. And that led to hopping on a phone call, and I told her my idea, and I was like, hey, how cool would it be if we could come up to, Maggie Valley and go to the stomping grounds? And she offered bringing into that area when she told me that there was like their local dance hall. I was like, I hit up Wales and I was like, hey man, they're talking about coming to the stomping grounds. I said, then we could do the video the next day. I said, I just want to go to stomping grounds and get some like clips to be able to use for some TikToks, because I was trying to learn TikTok. Yeah. And we wound up getting there, and they were like, well, how do you want us to dress? And I was like, I actually, I wanted to make a kind of throwback, but just like we're back at home. I was like, I work, coveralls, overall bibs. And they're like, we can wear bibs. And I was like, yeah. She's like, we all got bibs. She's like, that would make everybody so happy. So I show up, everybody's in bibs, I'm like, damn. I'm like, everybody's got bibs on. Will shows up, and we're just looking at each other. I'm like, dude, I don't know what we're going to do here, but let's try to see what we can get. I started playing the song. They loved the song. And long story short, it turned into us. We filmed it so many times of just like trying to get performance spots of them dancing and clogging to the music. Then Wales was like, hey, bro. I was like, what's up? He's like, dude, I think we're going to have 2 music videos. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we got enough footage from this that we can make a whole nother music video. He's like, I know that wasn't the plan, but he's like, I think we should do it. I'm like, you serious? He's like, yeah. And then it worked out even better. They came into the mix, and they came over, and I was trying to find extras and people to use for the Take My Land video. So then several of the people from the team and the community, all came out, and they were kind of like poured together like one big happy family. And then they were in 2 music videos, like people, some of them were in multiple videos. And so it just, man, it was such a great time. And I'm so grateful for that record. And it was so cool to watch it grow, and the amount of attention and how people received it. And man, just it's still moving the needle, man. It's just it's growing. It's the streams keep going up on it, the views on YouTube and Instagram. And to this day, people just come back and, man, I love that record, or I really relate to that record. It's a fun, loose way of kind of talking about that lifestyle of punching the clock 7 days, 5-7 days a week. Yeah. And yeah, that's what Blue Collar Swaller was, man. And it was a little hidden gem, I think, Oh,
100%, man. I love that song and the video both. And, I want to talk about your songwriting as well, because, I know that you did some songwriting competitions and also like songwriter circles, and a lot of people that are, in Nashville and country music, and, just as a writer, and some people just sing other people's music, but to be a singer songwriter, I mean, that's something special when you can actually tell a story. And, talk about some of these songwriting competitions that you did recently, because I think you actually worked with Mark Allen Cash, who's a nephew of Johnny Cash, and you were down at his property, and you also did something for a upcoming movie. So why don't you talk about some of your recent songwriting competitions and so forth?
Yeah. So, the Mark Allen Cash one was a lot of fun. We went out to Bon Aqua, which I had never been to Bon Aqua. And I tell you what, Dave, like when I moved to Nashville 4 years ago and bought a house down there, I was like, that was my transition. Like, I tell anybody this, anybody that watches this interview, or anybody that I ever meet that asks me about music, they say, hey, what was the deciding factor for you? I said, man, if you want to make it in country music specifically, but any music for that matter, I mean, Music City and Music Row and Nashville, it truly is a special place, connecting people, in our community and our industry of songwriters and artists. And, the town will wear you out. It's a city, but it's basically a small town inside of a metropolitan, market. And, the country music community specifically is a very small, tight knit group. And, so many people are coming in from teens to 20s, 30s, 40s, trying to make a stake and get their name or their music heard and build a brand. And, by the droves, they're constantly being turned away, you know what I mean? Or they give up too quick, or they go broke, or whatever the case might be. When I made the commitment to myself to buy a piece of real estate in Music City, that was going to be what was going to show everybody that was already, at the top of the food chain, or the ones that are watching, from the labels to the talent buyers to the booking agents to the, to the publishing houses. They were at that point knew that Brandon was like, 1000% committed. There was no turning back. And I got this opportunity to go to Omni Sound Studios, and I went out there, and it was Spire Films. They put this songwriting competition on, and I wound up getting the chance to get in with a group of guys. And they had there's about 20 of us writers there roughly, and they split us up into groups of 2 and 3. We had to choose themes. We watched a short film video for this movie, Shotgun Charlie. And then, it just kind of let everything full circle. And at that point, that was, again, another way for me to just dig deeper in myself, show the craft that I've been sharpening my tool belt, to the people that I was in that I didn't know. And that's one thing I love about writing sessions, whether I go into a write on a week-to-week basis with some random writers that I meet out, or if it's at, a different publishing house, we're going for building relationships and creativity. But in some situations, it's like playing sports. You're going for blood. You're trying to do everything you can to stand out and and put that W on the wall. And the W for us is getting a cut. And I was blessed with the opportunity that this fall, I want to say November is when it's going to go into pre-production or something like that. And then the song that we wrote is going to be one of the songs that's going to be a part of that feature film. So I'm excited to be able to have a song that's going to be a part of a feature film project in the next year or two, and hopefully continue to grow those relationships to just show that I'm more versatile. Obviously I'm doing my artist thing. I got my Hoss Nation brand. It's Brandon being out there on the road. But at the same time, it's what other value can I add to country music too? Whether it's commercials, whether it's to short films or feature films, any of those other layers that you can write music for. Because I just think that just makes you better, and it constantly makes you want to continue to grow. Writing is something that evolves as you get older, and the experiences that you get exposed to. And then that led into me going over to Johnny Cash's property, to the one, his property out in Bon Aqua, and meeting Mark Allen Cash, his nephew, and writing another song. And that was for the Man in Black. Again, going back to a lot of the old writers that made country music what it is today, that we cherish. My style is more, Florida, as you know, Dave, being from here. It's a combination of a couple things, man. There's a lot of Southern rock and hard rock that was in, Florida. You got your Limp Bizkits, you got your Tom Petty's, you got your, you got Rob Thomas, who went to my high school at Lake Brantley from Matchbox 20. You got all those different things, and but then you also have, the combinations of that crossover scene. There was a lot of touring done when the Skinners and 38 Specials and all that would come through in and out, in the Deep South over the years. So we have a lot of that culture down here, and then we have that country honky tonk old Florida presence that we're talking about. And a lot of my musical taste is in that Texas red dirt vein, or that Western waltz with that Americana folklore songwriting style with the storytelling principle. And so I found a way to kind of take that songwriting element and then take the Texas red dirt and take the Southern rock, hard rock, and just turn it into something that was my own, and create this new space that I feel like I'm starting to develop, that people are really enjoying, like the records that you have had an opportunity, and the other, fans that support my music have had a chance to discover and listen to on a week-to-week basis. And so going to Johnny Cash's property, when I'm on stage, man, I'm kind of like a gold chain cowboy. I wear all black, black denim, black top, black Stetson. I got my rattlesnake band. I got my gold chain on. It's got my Gibson. That's my brand. And it's I never replaced Johnny Cash, because that was who Johnny Cash was. but it was really surreal because it made me kind of feel like being on that stage performing at that property. It's like, man, I get to kind of take that torch and work towards trying to, be my own new man in black. You know what I mean? And kind of create that space of that, again, that vulnerability, that raw, that edginess, and that bone chilling, the skin crawling music, and it gives people something that I feel is not really being exposed. There's a lot of great music, a lot of great records, but how many artists, how many writers are writing, in the detail and the rawness, in country music the way that I am? You know what I mean? There's a handful that I know personally that are, for example, but again, they're not, their music is more in that singer songwriter space, like Benjamin Todd is phenomenal, or you got, the Culture Walls or the Tyler Childers, like guys like that, or, the Shaky Graves or the Billy Strings, or Charlie Crockett's, like they write in those spaces. But also at the same time, their music is more traditional, they come back with the upright bass and the rhythm guitars and, the more natural rudimentary, like, instruments, you know what I mean? Where me, I'm bringing the heavy, cutting Stratocasters and the driving drums and the pushes and, a little more of that heavier key play, you know what I mean? Like things that just make you feel a little bit more energy to that song, which is kind of cool to see that record go from a stripped down space to a raw, different space when you're in front of a live crowd where you could just be like in their face to a point where they're just like sweating, feeling every single word. And I think that's what motivates me to write deeper and deeper song after song as I go through these projects. And, these last couple of opportunities, like at Mark Allen Cash or the Spire Films at Omni Sound, gave me a chance to dig into my tool belt and kind of expose those unspoken truths.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing, as you're talking, it came up with my last question before we leave here, because I think it's important now that you have a couple of records in, you're getting a following, pretty big following, and just what comes with storytelling, is talk about the responsibility that comes with storytelling as an artist when you're singing for thousands of people. Talk about are you feeling more of a responsibility as you gain more followers to tell that story the right way and tell it, the way you want to tell it, but have an impact on those people, because they're going to walk away, maybe being inspired or maybe learn something that they didn't know in their lifetime. And I think music has a strong way of doing that. And, talk about it as an artist, that responsibility to tell it, to tell that story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I was actually with some friends the other day and I pulled up a picture. We were at Red Door and we were talking about this very thing. And they're like, Brandon, they're like, man, you write so intentional. And I said, it's my responsibility at this point. Like, I chose that for me. I went through all the adversity, all the ups and downs to this point over the last 5 years. And, again, going through COVID and stuff like that, where so many artists that were at the top, either fell apart and dissolved or had a major lull where it like pushed them back with their progress to maintaining their space, or ones that, were coming up that just kind of threw in the towel. I didn't, waver. I just pushed harder. And, now, there was a picture that came up on one of my posts from like about a couple of years ago. I played a show. This happened to be another show I was doing at the barn in Sanford. And I was sitting there with my hand on the microphone and my left hand's on the neck of the guitar. And it's up on the fretboard, like close up to the body of the guitar. And all of a sudden there was a random post that was posted about Eric Church. And Eric Church was sitting there with the same Hummingbird Deluxe Gibson guitar that I have. We had the same guitar. We're sitting the same way on the stage. We're holding the microphone with the same hand. We're holding the guitar in the same spot. Like everything was like, if you had ever rolled the dice and guessed if it could ever happen again, like from a moment in time from someone just taking a picture, you would be like, nah, that would never happen. unless you physically posted it that way. But this was so organic and so real. And I remember making that post, and I said, look, I said, there's only one chief in Music City. And I said, and then that's Eric Church. And I said, and there's only one hoss in Music City, and that's Brandon Bing. And I came back and I said, I told my buddies when we were talking about, I said, it's my civic and creative responsibility as an artist to use my platform to be able to share these truths and to be so direct and so specific, no matter how hard and how uncomfortable it can make my audience. Because I said, the people that are going to latch onto this and that are going to really feel this emotionally and connect to those lyrics are going to be the ones that I want. I would much rather, Dave, have 1,000 super fans if I never got any more than that, which obviously I do. But if I would rather have 1,000 super fans than to have 1 million followers, because that 1,000 super fans is going to sit there and instinctively, every time I drop a record, every show that I come into their town, every time I do anything that's surrounded something that I release, you know, they're going to be right there, you know, having my back. You know, I tell people all the time, I said, you know, where I come from, where we come from in Florida, you know, in an old Florida, you know, I tell them, I said, if you can survive in Florida, you can survive anywhere. Because I said, where we come from the swamp. And I said, it's a lot more uncomfortable living in that environment than living in some of these other, you know, city markets and things like that, where crime's high and stuff. It's just a different thing living in Florida as a whole. You know, even if you're in Miami like you are, and you know that for yourself firsthand. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, John Anderson did that so well with the whole Seminole Wind when he painted that picture. You know, and that's one of the things down the line. I've had buddies over the last few years who are like, man, when are you going to write the next Seminole Wind? And I said, I can't do that right now. I said, not because I don't want to, not because I don't think, but I'm not worthy of that right now. I'll be worthy when I get to a certain point in my career and I can take all of that history that makes up Florida for what it truly is, that our elders, you know, created. And then there's going to be that moment that's going to come to me where I'll write that record. Yeah. And I said, that's part of my duty as a writer and as a storyteller is to be as raw and as uncut as I can and intentional as I can when I'm playing and looking into the eyes of those people in those crowds. And it makes me dig so hard on stage and be so meticulous and finite in everything, every little detail, every pattern that I'm picking, every way that I sing a certain melody or a note, every chord change. Like it just, I feel this energy in the room every time. And that's what I want to be with me for as long as I get to do this, you know what I mean? And I feel like I truly have had the opportunity and the blessing at this point that I have defined that for me, and nobody else is going to step into my lane to take that from me, because I've earned the respect in Nashville over the last 5 years from the people and all the different avenues, right? Like I said, whether it's labels, whether it's publishing houses, whether it's booking and management, they know who Brandon Bing is. They know, you know, and I got Amy on the air when I played a sold out show with Charles Eston about a month and a half ago at the Third and Lindsley. Never played Third and Lindsley, played it, opened up full band for my friend Julia Cole and Charles Eston, and sold out spot. It was dope. We had a great time. And I was my buddy Chris Rippey. He does some of my footage, you know, on the road as well. He did a recap video, and I happened to see it. And I got this cosign from, you know, 103.3 FM Nashville and Cumulus Media. And she was up on stage, and she's like, you know, he is one of the best storytellers in Nashville. You know, and if you haven't been to a show, you guys are in for a real treat. And when she's like hearing that and playing that back, I'm like, you know, this is major radio for an independent act. You know, hearing that, you know, that they see that. So it's like, I'm this close to that next big spot, and I'm just going to keep grinding, fighting claw tooth and nail to get there. And I'm never going to take it for granted, but I want to inspire and I want to mentor and I want to help as many people I can inside, you know, our country music community, and also just, you know, our country as a whole, because I feel like there's a lot of people, Dave, that have gone through things in life that they feel misunderstood, or they don't know who to go to get guidance, and they don't want to go to a shrink or a counselor all the time. You know what I mean? But they use these songs. Yeah. And my song Outlaw Dream that I wrote with my buddy Trevor Bolden, I did that on Outlaw Dream. I wrote a record. I wrote in the chorus, I said, I'm a highway drifter, 7-day-a-week sinner. The stage is my church and pew. I'm married to the music. It's a country only union, y'all. Just living this outlaw dream. And it was like, that's my platform. Every time I step on stage, every time I get on an interview like this, I get to use that as my opportunity to proclaim the gospel of these songs, to attach these people, to make them cry, to make them just to smile, make them cry, make them feel something, make them angry, make them feel pure, because it's like, it's okay to be like that. It's okay to be like that. And I think a lot of people just, they always want to emulate. They always want to be somebody that they're not. And it's like, no, we're human.
Right.
And
be yourself.
That's what
I know people are like that, man. It's like, just be yourself. And as I get older, I'm 54 now. And as I get older, I feel more and more compelled to be myself and not care what other people think, and I think if more people were like that, like you said, and you talk about it in your music, just, like that, just be yourself, be human. Because people fall down, man. Everybody falls down. It's how you're going to pick yourself up again is what's going to make you, is going to make your character. So that's what I love about your music, man. It's raw. It's great. Just amazing stuff. And again, just happy to have you on the show again. And let's talk about what you have coming up. I mean, is there anything on the horizon that we can be excited about?
Yeah, man. I'm working on, I just finished the studio, a week and a half ago. I cut 6 more songs. So I got another batch of music behind the scenes right now that people don't know that's coming, but I'm just trying to be really strategic about what this next project's going to be. And I got a lot of exciting things coming between now and the end of the year, leading into 2024 in preparation for what that's going to look like. So I'm working with my team on that. And we're just trying to brainstorm like how we want to release it, what we want to create videos for, how we want to tease these things so that we can build this synergy and this momentum behind it the right way. So the next year is just one of the biggest years ever. So, in addition to that, I'm going to be booking shows. We just updated, the website, I pulled everything, cleaned it all up, updated it now. My buddy Sean, my web designer, he did all that stuff. And, we're going to be putting show schedules. I'm in the process now. Between now and the next 4 to 6 weeks, I'm just going to be booking shows left and right to plan a late summer and fall run. So I can make, several stops to make 2023, special for everybody. So I've been asking people, anybody that can go and send me venues or places I haven't been, I'm trying to make routes. And, I got some different artists that I'm going to be collaborating with on some of these shows. Playing some of these shows on the road with, so I'll be excited to announce that. I do have a show that's going to be coming up on the 7th. That's going to be I'm going to be opening for a friend of mine, Ella Langley. That's over in Southern Social. That's going to be up in Middleburg, Florida, on the 7th of July. And then I'll be making some other announcements right after that. So I happen to be coming into town for that, and I'm doing a bottle signing event at the Whiskey in Orlando. I'm flying in on the 5th, and I'll be doing the event on the 6th, making updates on all my socials for that, for my Bangtail Whiskey. And then so I'll do the whiskey bottle signing, and then I'll have the show the next day, and then, route back out of Florida again. But yeah, stay tuned for a bunch of show announcements coming up between now and the end of the year, full band shows. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of new faces and people that I haven't had a chance to meet. And hopefully, capture some new followers and things like that. People that want to attach to this music and be a part of this Hoss Nation movement. Because I promise one thing, we coming with the heat, and the fire started. Now we just got to pour gas on and let it burn.
Let's talk about real quick before we leave. I wanted you to plug your whiskey real quick because I know you have a bottle signing, but talk about that real quick because that's exciting.
Oh yeah, it's right here on the hat, right here.
There you go.
It is Bangtail Whiskey. You can you can follow my whiskey. It's on social media. If you follow me on Brandon Bing Music on Instagram, it's right in my bio. It says Bangtail Whiskey, or just go to Bangtail Whiskey or bangtail.com. I have distribution currently in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and I'm going to be making it a big announcement next month for another state that we're about to secure. So I'm really excited about making that announcement next month in a few weeks. And it's going to be, man, it's just going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be, what I'm looking to do with the whiskey is Bangtail Whiskey is, I built this brand for a few things. I wanted to have something that was going to be a part of. I'm a big whiskey bourbon connoisseur. My mom's from Kentucky, so it's kind of in my veins. And I wanted to have something that was going to follow me on the road as I continue to grow as an artist and grow the Hoss Nation brand. And I want something that the fans could have, that they can enjoy, on a week to week or monthly basis, when they're not at a show, and still be attached to that community of what Hoss Nation is. But I'm working on making Bangtail to be like the official whiskey of live music, supporting original live music, supporting our creatives, our writers, all the guys and gals that make it all happen behind the scenes. That are doing our back line, our audio engineering, for all the acts that you love seeing out on the road. And so I got a lot of great friends, a lot of great artist friends and industry friends that are, supporting me, that really love the whiskey and really love the brand and what it stands for. And then I'm also making it to be, a whiskey for women as well, trying to really capture that demographic of females. But, where the ladies go, the men are going to be. So I'm like, if you got good music, good people, good music and a good time, you just can't beat that type of experience. And I just want, people want experiences. People want experiences. People want things that when they go and then they're done, they can look back on it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now and be like, man, that was one hell of a time, And that's what Bangtail is. And obviously I also I do a lot of stuff in the rodeo space as well. So, but yeah, check out Bangtail, grab a bottle, join the Hoss Nation movement. Go to Brandon Bing Music on all the socials. Follow me, hit the bell notifications, check out the Rat Race video. Stay tuned for new show updates, and hopefully I'll see you all on the road. And we're just gonna have one hell of a time.
You said it so well. And just as we end here, I just want to tell my listeners, make sure you go see Rat Race again. Check him out on the socials, like he said, because this guy's amazing. And he's, like I said, just going to keep going up and up and up from here. So, Brandon, I can't thank you enough for being on the show again. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and make sure you keep us updated, and we'll have you back soon.
Hey, sounds good, Dave, man. Appreciate you. And as always, Hoss Nation, appreciate y'all.